Hello everybody, welcome back to the British Museum. It's the second Periscope. Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see you all coming in now, welcome. This is the British Museum's second Periscope. I'm Dan Snow, I'm at the History Guy, and we are here in a very special gallery, very special exhibition on a very special day. Today is the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo, the 200th anniversary of the decisive final battle in a terrible, long-running war that had torn Europe apart and led to the deaths of millions of people. We're here to talk about this man here, Napoleon Bonaparte, one of the greatest generals of all time. Hi, everybody. Good to see you all coming in. This is rather a flattering statue of Napoleon Bonaparte. I'm not sure he would actually have looked like this. In fact, when he saw it himself, he said it was almost too much. But it was made, and it was owned by British sympathisers, and we're talking more about British sympathisers later. Hello everyone, if you're joining us, we're going to go and look round. Now, you're in landscape mode, don't panic, turn your phones around. The reason you're in landscape mode is because my buddy Gabriel here and me believe that you should be seeing this we are in the British Museum, we're in the best museum in the world. It is wide, you're getting a really lovely wide view here. So apologies for that, guys. Turn the phone around, sorry for you watching it on a desktop, but I hope you bear with us because we are going to show you treasures, is what we're going to show you. British Museum, best museum in the world. Follow them on Twitter, follow them on Facebook. Let's go into the gallery here. We are joined by Sheila O'Connell, who is in charge of this wonderful exhibition here. Don't forget, we think of the British Museum having statues and things and treasures. Part of their treasure collection is paintings and prints like these ones here, and we've got an incredible collection. Sheila, how are you doing?
Fine.
Right, so we're talking about Napoleon, and the reason we're talking about Napoleon, to come back to the beginning, is because today, 200 years ago, in fact, right now, to the hour, Napoleon was fleeing. His army had just broken, and he was fleeing from the battlefield of Waterloo. His extraordinary career was over. And how did his career begin? Rather glamorous.
Yeah, absolutely. Handsome young general. Everyone was interested in him. The prints that we're showing here at the beginning of the prints and drawing are showing Napoleon as a young man when he was a revolutionary general. Everyone incredibly interested to find out who he was.
What a glamorous young man
he
compared
was.
to the old regime French kings with their makeup.
Yeah.
And this is a radical young figure.
Exactly.
Dresses well.
Yep.
What have we got over here?
So, let's have a look. We're talking about the war. Remember how expensive war always is. We spend so much money on war. This fantastic print by James Gilray shows how Prime Minister William Pitt was swallowing all the British gold and spewing out paper. This is the first issue of paper money because the gold bullion had run out.
So Napoleon had a big impact on the world. One of them, it led to the issuing of paper money, which of course we've still got today. Another thing, tax. Tax changed a lot, didn't it?
Especially. Lots of new taxes were introduced in order to pay for the war, but the one that people hated most of all was, of course, the income tax.
Income tax. Brought in for the first time. It was temporary.
It was temporary.
What happened?
We don't know it anymore, do we?
Yeah, exactly. Well, now, let's go and see. What else have we got over here? Lead the way, Sheila.
Well, let's look at Napoleon in Egypt.
Because he invades Egypt, doesn't he?
Yeah. This is when we start to think, Britain start to think, well, maybe it's not such a good thing. And thanks particularly to our great hero, Nelson, who's defeated Napoleon's fleet at the Battle of the Nile.
So this is an original...
This is an original poster. For a reconstruction of the Battle of the Nile at Sadler's Wells Theatre.
Wow, that's
believe it or not.
This is a very famous cartoon here, isn't it?
This is wonderful. This is John Bull, who at this time tends to stand for the ordinary, sturdy Englishman. He's often eating roast beef, of course, but in this case he's eating all those French ships which the admirals are offering him, particularly Nelson, who's standing in the foreground.
People think about the distant past. They think it was an age of reverence and respect for politicians. These cartoonists, this is very... You expect to see this in today's newspapers. People being rude about prime ministers and politicians.
Yeah, we have plenty of that.
Nothing changes. Right, let's keep going. What have we got here?
Well, this case is particularly interesting for the British Museum's history because Napoleon in Egypt took about 100 scholars with him to study the history of Egypt. Egypt wasn't really very well known in Europe at that time. It was still part of the Ottoman Empire. And those scholars were collecting artifacts from ancient Egypt. Among them was that great treasure, the Rosetta Stone, which has found its way to the British Museum. Other treasures did find their way to the Louvre eventually, But
because Napoleon was defeated in Egypt. He tried to march back overland. That didn't work either. So he sort of escaped, didn't he?
he managed to leave by sea, but his army stayed there for several years afterwards until they were finally defeated by the English in 1802. And meanwhile, the scholars were gathering all sorts of interesting things together.
And the British Museum was largely the beneficiary of that.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff, isn't it? Right,
Well, the British Museum and the world.
And the world, of course, of course.
He goes back to France, takes a leading part in a coup against the Directory, who was the government of France at the time, and becomes first consul.
Now, look, this is a wonderful one. This is a sort of equivalent of the French Parliament, and there's Napoleon as a crocodile coming in with his. That is a military coup, and all the little sort of.
Yeah.
Well,
and of course, they're remembering that he's just come back from Egypt, so he's a crocodile, and the crocodile is the cartoonist's favourite.
No holes barred. These cartoons are pretty brutal. Oh, okay. Well, look at those. Right, okay. What have we got next? Let's take where do you want to go?
So he becomes first consul. He defeats the
So
Austrian.
dictator almost, a sort of leader.
That's one way of looking at it. Yeah. He leads his army back to Italy, where he'd already defeated the Austrians. The Austrians have come back while he was in Egypt. He defeats them again, and finally peace, after 9 years of war, peace is declared all over Europe at Amiens in 1802.
And British tourists.
Because
we've always been a bit obsessed by France, haven't we?
Yeah. And here's Britannia.
Britannia's the big fat
eating rather a lot of
heiress.
roast beef,
Yeah.
and she's being kissed by this rather suspicious-looking Frenchman.
Now, this is an amazing.
This
I'll
is-
just quickly ask:
this-
have we Brits always been portrayed as just badly dressed, badly mannered
Exactly.
idiots when we go over to France?
Absolutely, exactly.
is
This
that?
is the French absolutely love these prints, but I think a lot of them were made for the English market because the English like to laugh at themselves.
Okay, well that's good. I'm glad we did. Yeah, so what?
Peace is declared the peace treaty signed in early 1802, but no one believes that peace is going to last. But the population, of course, doesn't really want to go to war again. Nasty business. So a propaganda campaign starts on both sides. The English campaign really focuses now on Napoleon himself rather than the revolutionary French government. And James Gurrier, again, his great invention is Little Boney. Actually, Napoleon
Yes, the sort of midget, yeah.
Yeah, he was actually 5'6".
He was normal height. He was perfectly normal height for a Frenchman at the time.
But we've got to, we've got to show he's not really as scary as we think. We're going to be able to defeat him. He's tiny. And here he's shown standing on the hand of George III.
So that's history myth number one.
Yeah.
Napoleon wasn't that short. Number two, Vikings never had horns on their helmets. So the two biggest things that we've ever come across. Right, where should we go next? Guys, in case you've just joined us, we're at the British Museum. We are doing a tour around this extraordinary gallery, marking 200 years since Napoleon was defeated on the battlefield at Waterloo. 200 years ago, to the minute, I tell you. And we are aiming the landscape deliberately because we want to give you a wonderful, wide sense of this gallery here. So thanks for joining us. If you've got any questions, let us know. We'll be monitoring Twitter as well.
So lots and lots of prints being produced just at this time of to start war again. And this is just one wonderful example showing what will happen if Napoleon lands in England. 48 hours after landing, his head's going to be on a pike and John Bull's going to be holding that pike up.
Well, I think that was pretty hopeful thinking because, of course, he was a military genius, wasn't he? And
But he didn't manage to get here.
He didn't manage to get here. He didn't manage to get here because the British Navy controlled the channel. Right, so here we go. Let's keep going.
By the end of 1804, he's crowned himself Emperor of France and its empire of the period. And
Here we go. Now we're getting this about halfway to Waterloo.
Yeah.
Oh, this is one of the most notable prints cartoons of the time, isn't it?
yeah, a wonderful print showing William Pitt, the British Prime Minister, and Napoleon sort of evenly balanced in their carving up of the world. Napoleon's got hold of Europe, but skinny Pitt, has got hold of the Atlantic trade, the Caribbean, North American trade,
Because
which
the
is
Brits
so important.
can't defeat the French on land, and the French can't defeat the Brits at sea. So for years, there's a sort of standoff, isn't there?
Exactly.
Aha,
And of course,
speaking
the
of which.
great naval leader was Nelson, who, of course, dies at his moment of his greatest victory at Trafalgar in October 1805. Huge
Amazing funeral,
amazing.
a massive national celebrity, but destroys the French fleet, doesn't he? But as he's doing that,
He's doing that.
there's a battle we don't talk about very much in Britain.
Exactly. at Austerlitz in Austria, Napoleon defeats the Russians and the Austrians. Huge battle, incredibly effective in actually forcing the whole of Europe to sign treaties with him. And we try not to think about it.
The
too
Brits
much.
do not think about it. So Trafalgar on the water stops French plans to really move by sea. Austerlitz on the land makes Napoleon master of the continent of Europe. So you've got a real situation. What is going to give? Let's see now up here. Various campaigns, various battles.
Napoleon going into Spain, and then the big mistake.
One of the famous ones, yeah.
Going into Russia. By this time, James Gilray, who was the great caricaturist of the early part of the Napoleonic campaign, is no longer working, and his place is taken by George Cruikshank, who is the young George Cruikshank, only 20 at the time, and here he's showing Napoleon struggling back from Moscow, wearing that huge hat, struggling through the snow.
Funny. It's so deep in snow you can't see all their little heads. This idea of belittling French people is very important in these.
And nobody was wearing the bonnet rouge anymore.
No, of course.
But that's the
question coming in.
What started the British and the French not liking each other?
Oh wow, that's a heck of one of the most biggest neighbours. We're separated by just 20 miles of channel. And our interests we've often cooperated. Don't forget, we've been incredible allies and friends through the years as well. But time to time, like all next-door neighbours, you have interests that collide, particularly when your royal families have intermarried and various cousins start claiming each other's thrones. That was the cause of the kind of medieval falling out. Yeah. But I suppose by this period, it's the rest of the world. Trade, money, sugar.
And beginnings of empire.
Yeah. Right, so here we go.
We're back in Spain.
So Russia's been a disaster, Napoleon's kind of lost his army, and it's a bit havoc.
It's havoc. He's forced to abdicate, and he's exiled off to Elba.
Leaves France.
Beautiful island of Elba. And in less than a year, he's back again.
He throws the dice, one last gamble. He says he'd rather die with his sword in his hand than sort of rotting away on his little island of Elba. And what happens then? Here we go, guys.
Well, the inevitable happens. The other nations gear their armies together up, and Napoleon makes a preemptive coup over the Belgian border, and here we are at Waterloo.
200 years ago today. That's why this exhibition's here. It's why we're here today. I'm here with Sheila. She's showing me these incredible paintings, drawings, and prints that the British Museum has got. And this is Waterloo. This is I have to say, this actually depicts the scene at Waterloo almost to the minute 200 years ago now, doesn't it? The evening is setting in on the 18th of June 1815, and look at that battlefield, terrible amounts of casualties.
Yeah. And then these watercolours here were actually made on the spot just 2 days later, 2 days after the battle. And if you look in closely here, you can see these naked bodies.
Guys, can you see on Periscope, can you see very faintly there's naked bodies here which have been stripped. Their clothes, valuables.
Uniforms, gold buttons, souvenirs which were collected later on.
So naked, decaying corpses littering the battlefield.
There was terrible rain immediately after the battle, so even bodies that had been buried were being washed out.
So, and a climactic moment in European and world history, and the King's return, the revolution that Napoleon represented, was the lid was put on it, but only for a while, wasn't it?
But there was a lot of trouble immediately afterwards. But
that's another episode. That's another story. And how does Napoleon end up?
And Napoleon, of course, is exiled again, but this time right to the South Atlantic, the tiny island of St. Helena. And this last little mournful case shows him, painting of him looking out to sea, some locks of his hair and pieces of jewellery still collected by some of the people who still admired him. And then the death mask in 1821 when he died.
Napoleon Bonaparte. He was an ill man at Waterloo, wasn't he? He wasn't at his best.
He wasn't at his best.
And he didn't live that much later. And it's sad instantly he spent his whole time sort of writing his memoirs and blaming everyone else for his failure. Have we got any other questions coming in? We got Sheila right here. She is the curator of this extremely good exhibition. How long is it on for?
It's on until August the 16th.
And is it free?
It's free.
It's free of charge, so you can come to the British Museum and not... Oh, can we just show the battle standards? Can we just show the stands? Come here, this is one last thing. Napoleon, famous for issuing his armies with eagles, sort of trying to I suppose, emulating Rome to a certain extent, emulating Rome. And look at that, as the French troops marched, they had golden eagles glittering over their heads. At the tricolour here, a couple of these eagles captured Waterloo. I think no more than 2 or 3, but captured Waterloo. But these ones were surrendered to the Duke of Wellington after the battle, weren't they?
Yeah, these were surrendered. These were the ones that never actually made it to Waterloo because they were given to the National Guard during those 100 days that Napoleon was in Paris before Waterloo.
N for Napoleon here, N for Bonaparte there. The B's were his.
Of course, when Louis XVIII came back to the throne, he did not want flags saying Emperor Napoleon, and he gave them to Wellington. And
We've got one more question.
One more question. Here we go.
Why was he sent into exile? Why was he not killed or jailed?
in fact, the Prussians, who were the other major army at Waterloo, did think perhaps he should be killed, but. Remember, the war was over when he surrendered. He signed a peace treaty. We don't usually kill war leaders once they've signed a
once
peace
they've surrendered. And
he'd actually asked if he could come and live in England.
Yeah, he asked the Prince Regent.
Yeah, Prince Regent wasn't very happy with that idea. No.
But he did tantalising. He glimpsed Britain from he travelled down to St Helena in a British Navy vessel, and he glimpsed the shore, and he thought this was the nation of shopkeepers that finally defeated me. But that I think is what enough for today. Thank you very much. I hope you've all enjoyed learning about Waterloo. Please swipe down or right and follow the British Museum. Please follow them on Twitter and Facebook. Please come and visit the British Museum and look at all the wonderful YouTubes they got and everything like that. Sheila, congratulations on such a fantastic exhibition. I have spent many happy hours in here, and it is really a reminder that the British Museum doesn't just do big blocks of marble and precious metals. It has an extraordinary collection of images from all of our shared past as well. So thank you very much for displaying them so brilliantly. And goodbye, everybody.